these are some of the principles that we use to design a system. So these are when you're looking at, okay, I'm going to design a garden and I want to have my chickens in the garden. I want to have my bees. And, okay, I want to have a couple trees, and I have this all. So you want to work with nature. Let's work with the chickens and think about what are their characteristics, so that we don't have to keep throwing them food all day long. Let's design it so that they can eat on their own. Let's work ourselves out of the system. Let's make it a little more efficient, and let's keep our labor down, basically, so we have more time to go surf. And so yeah, and the other thing, permaculture, that I really like about it is it looks at problems as opportunities. This is what we're looking at right now. Okay, economic collapse, environmental disaster. It's not a problem. No worries. It's an opportunity. It's a chance for all of us to have jobs that are more fulfilling. Perhaps the green economy. Everybody's hear about green collar jobs. It's going to boom. It's just taking off right now. People are realizing that that's what we need to invest in. So it's an opportunity. We want to make the least change for the greatest possible effect. That's a really sublime one that you guys can learn more about with more design. The yield of the system is theoretically unlimited. It's only limited by your imagination. How many parts can you connect together to increase the yield of the system? Like, how many more potatoes can you get out of your garden if you plant some other crop beforehand? Okay, that's kind of an example. And then everything's connected. If you've ever done any meditation, you'll know that one. And we gotta let go of power. We gotta understand that nature rules. We can't control it. There's always good benefit. On and on. So these are principles that we deal with in permaculture. And it's a holistic design system. It deals with the visible and the invisible. The invisible structures are pretty much things that none of us want to deal with, like finance and politics and all that kind of stuff. The visible is more interesting. You know, plants and water, all that good stuff you can play around with. But in that flower, you saw how it's a design system that we can design businesses so that there's more useful connections. Waste in business, okay? That's a bygone. There's no such thing as waste anymore. Waste is an opportunity for food. Everything's food. Everything needs to eat. Pollution is unused resource. It's too much sewage in the ocean. Hey, that sewage could be used somewhere else, and we'll talk about that later. Ecological sanitation. How can we deal with our waste as a resource instead of just keep flushing it away and praying that it's not going to come back in the form of hepatitis when we go swimming? And that's reality in a lot of places, you know. They don't have sewage treatment. Go to San Diego during a big storm and tens of millions of gallons will be flushed into the ocean. And then we eat fish out of it, right? It's not just surfers, it's not just people who go in the ocean. If you eat fish, even if you don't eat fish, it rains, the rainwater comes from the ocean. Everything is connected. So, I'm kidding, I'm digressing. How do we teach permaculture? How do we teach sustainable design? We want to do hands-on educational projects. So let's go build a garden. All right, every step of the way there's a learning moment. Let's do it this way. Let's set this up this way. So we want to teach by doing. And so we created a couple projects, and we were kind of brainstorming what are we going to want to do when we're down in Central America. We didn't really know. Kind of just came prepared with a lot of tools and a lot of gusto, and like, all right, well, we'll figure it out. We'll get there and we'll see what really needs to happen. We knew that water treatment, human waste management were going to be issues, and then we wanted to have a little bit of fun. So creative expression, aka art. So there's 3 issues with water: quality, conservation, and catchment. And I would really love to create projects that have to really deal with all of these. We touched on the quality and conservation with the composting toilets, because the composting toilet that we were doing keeps the sewage out of, it doesn't flush, there's no water, it's just a drum. And your waste doesn't get into the water system. And you don't use water to flush. If Santa Barbara, everybody here in Santa Barbara County had a compost toilet, we would save about 1 million gallons of water a day. That's 3 gallons per person per day to flush. And that's in a low flow toilet. And it's pretty, you know, conservative estimate. So it's pretty huge issue. Here's a really cost-effective way to treat water. This looks a little bit complicated, but it can be extremely simplified. All you need is the first big part, really. The second part is more for the scientists. Trickle water through sand. Simple. Fill a bucket with sand and let water drain through it. That'll clean it. You know, it's a little more than that, but you create a system, and there's this SWoBs that says there is actually an algae layer which lives on the top layer of the sand, and that has a biological, it's kind of like a stream bank, like the edge of a stream bank, and that's where the water really gets clean. So, and then there's the filter bed is sand, and you have gravel, and we put a charcoal layer in between too for a nice taste. But this is really cheap. I mean, you don't need to buy anything to do this. You can find it on the side of the road in a lot of places. And then catchment. This is Darren Doherty's work in Vietnam. You can see this Darren on the right. He modeled the top off the Vietnamese hat. And this here, that's the lip. It's a water tank that actually catches at the same time. You never see it. It's kind of silly. You see them up on the pass, East Minas Hill. They have a convex or a concave roof, so the water actually drains into the tank. Would love to build some of these here at City College and other places. So here's a picture of the beautiful composting toilet. And don't all gasp at once. They really are safe and sanitary. It's, in my opinion, you have a question?
What do you do with the waste after? Do you use it for like human manure?
Yeah, human manure. Maybe we'll save the questions for the end, but yeah, human manure. The worms convert human manure into compost. And it's up to you what you do with it at that point.
Right.
It's good for trees, it's good for vegetables. Many countries in the world, people use human waste for growing food. And it happens in this country too, unbeknownst to you. And the reality is that the sewage treatment plants, they deal with a chemical process. Most of them, they're not a biological process. And in my opinion, that's inferior in a lot of ways to a biological process. Especially if your biological process, like the living machine, anybody heard of living machines? It's kind of like it's a tank full of plants. And the water trickles through it, and the plants take up nutrients, aka waste, or aka pollution. They take that up in their roots. And they filter the water as it works its way through. It's like an artificial wetland. That's what wetlands do. They're kind of like, I don't know, like our bladder or something of the planet. The wetland filters all the water that goes down off the land, and it slows it down, and there's a bazillion little root hairs taking up the little pieces of poop and whatever you got floating down in the creek. And they eat it, and they trap it in their material, in their plant matter, and it goes out to the sea clean. The water goes out clean. So yeah, it uses no water, and it keeps the sewage out of the environment because it uses no water. All your waste is confined to that little drum, and there's worms inside of that drum, and so they eat your waste, and they convert it. They pass all of it through their little system, and it takes all the disease-causing organisms out. And the last little sentence, bullet point I have there is that methane gas, biogas, is produced by a lot of us, probably a lot more than we'd like sometimes, especially after a burrito. But we can use that to run our cars, or anything. We can cook. I mean, in a lot of countries, actually in Europe, biogas is a huge methane gas they use for running public transportation. A lot of the buses, and it's like CNG, like compressed natural gas cars, same conversion, or liquid propane, LPG, same conversion. We could take all our waste, produce methane gas off of it, run our cars, and then we would still be able to use it for compost. There's still compost left over.